everyone, welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. U.S. President Donald Trump says he plans to impose 100% tariffs on all chips and semiconductors coming into the United States, which is expected to be a threat to Korean chipmakers. Trump also says he intends to meet his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, in person as soon as next week. A special counsel team investigating former First Lady Kim Keon Hee made a second attempt this morning to arrest former President Yoon Suk-yeol, who's currently jailed, and bring him in for questioning over allegations of election meddling. We start with the special counsel team investigating the former First Lady, which made a second attempt to bring former President Yoon Suk-yeol in for questioning. However, due to Yoon's firm refusal and the risk of injury, the attempt was halted at around 9:40 a.m. The attempt began around 8 a.m. on Thursday at Seoul Detention Center, where Yoon is being held on insurrection charges. The special counsel team is probing former First Lady Kim Keon Hee, who faces 16 charges, including stock manipulation and election meddling. Its warrant to detain Yoon for questioning is separate from Yoon's detention for insurrection. On August 1st, the counsel team failed to detain Yoon after the former president reportedly resisted by lying on the floor in his prison cell wearing only underwear. Today's attempt to arrest Yoon comes a day after the special counsel team called in former First Lady Kim Keon Hee over a series of allegations made against her. Kim became the first wife of a former president to face a public summons by prosecutors as a suspect. Our political correspondent Son Heung-min reports.
The special counsel's first questioning of former First Lady Kim Keon Hee lasted over 7 hours. The face-to-face session held on Wednesday at the office of Special Counsel Min Jung-gi in Jongno-gu District ended at around 5:46 p.m., about 7 hours and 23 minutes after it began at 10:23 a.m. Kim, the wife of former President Yoon Suk-yeol, then went through the written record of her questioning. The questioning comes after the special counsel mailed a summons to Kim's residence about 2 weeks ago to request her appearance as a suspect. Shortly after 10 a.m. on Wednesday, Kim arrived at the office, bowed and apologized to the public for causing concern before being questioned.
I am truly sorry that a nobody like myself has caused concern for the people. I will faithfully undergo the questioning.
However, she did not respond to questions from reporters about the allegations. This marks the first time in South Korea's constitutional history that a First Lady has been publicly named as a suspect in an investigation. The special counsel team focused on 5 of the 16 allegations made against Kim, starting with her purported role in manipulating stock prices. Other allegations include interference in the candidate nomination process during past elections and receiving luxury gifts from the Unification Church through a broker. Since Kim did not agree to be video recorded, the face-to-face questioning took place without it. According to the special counsel team, Kim did not exercise her right to remain silent. Ahead of the questioning, Kim's representative said she would answer questions as fully as possible without refusing, but wanted to avoid questioning after 9 p.m. due to her poor health. The special counsel is expected to summon Kim again for further questioning over other allegations. Son Heung-min, Arirang News.
Now, over in Washington, U.S. President Donald Trump says the United States will charge 100% tariff on foreign-made semiconductors, a move that could impact South Korea's chip industry. Meanwhile, the United States president also announced an additional 25% tariff on Indian goods in response to New Delhi's continued importing of Russian oil. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump said Wednesday that Washington will impose a tariff of about 100% on semiconductors. Trump made the remarks at a White House event, stressing that while a tariff of approximately 100% will be placed on imported chips and semiconductors, there's no charge if manufactured in the United States. In order to impose the tariffs, Trump invoked Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, which gives the president the authority to adjust imports if it's determined that they could impair national security. The latest move is expected to negatively impact South Korea's chip industry, which relies heavily on exports. Meanwhile, Trump on Wednesday announced an additional 25% tariff on goods from India, citing New Delhi's continued purchases of Russian oil. The announcement also marks a sharp escalation in trade tensions between the U.S. and India following the collapse of recent trade talks. The new tariffs, set to take effect in 21 days, will raise the levy on certain Indian goods into the U.S. as high as 50%, one of the steepest rates imposed on any U.S. trading partner. The announcement comes as Trump warned of impending penalties, accusing India of aiding Russia's war in Ukraine through energy imports. Following the U.S. leader's announcement of the additional 25% tariffs, the Indian government vowed to move to protect national interest. According to India's Ministry of External Affairs, the additional tariffs are unfair, unjustified, and unreasonable, adding that its imports of Russian oil are only with the overall objective of ensuring the energy security of 1.4 billion people in India. It further added that India is being targeted for something that several other countries are also doing for their own national interest. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
As we just heard, U.S. President Donald Trump now says he will impose higher tariffs on chips unless companies are manufacturing in the United States. And with President Lee Jae-myung set to meet Trump soon, eyes are now on the economic impact this may have on South Korean businesses and the economy. For more on this, we're joined by Professor Shin Myung-gyu, Associate Professor of Economics at Yonsei University. Professor Shim, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So Trump now says the United States will charge a 100% tariff on foreign-made chips, and he also said he plans to announce tariffs on pharmaceuticals soon. How might this affect Korean companies?
While both industries can be negatively affected by higher than expected tariff rate announced by President Trump, expected effects seem to be different between the two industries. First, export of pharmaceuticals to the U.S. was about 20% of all exports, which took significant portions. This implies that higher price due to the tariff might have a significant negative impact on the industry. In contrast, according to the recent data, direct export of the semiconductor firms to the U.S. is less than 1% of all the export. Importantly, Micron, the U.S. semiconductor producing firm, also produces much of its goods in Taiwan and Japan. This makes the semiconductor firms not to lose their price competitiveness in the U.S. market, making the effect of the tariff, which is announced to be strikingly high today, limited.
Right, and Seoul and Washington also reached a trade deal last week. Will the details of the tariff agreement be on the agenda when Presidents Lee Jae-myung and Donald Trump meet later this month?
Yes, and it is highly likely that they will spend some time to discuss the details of the trade tariff agreement, given that officials from both countries express different opinions about the details of the agreement. As recent news on the tariff agreement between the U.S. and Japan showed, there seems to be more rooms to discuss further details on the already agreed agreement. For example, how much the Korean government should spend more on defense spending has not yet been fully agreed upon, and President Trump might link the issue to the tariff again to push President Lee to get additional profits from the tariff policy.
Right, like you just mentioned, the two countries' officials have different opinions on the key details of the agreement. With disagreements over these issues like rice market access and Trump's unpredictability, how will talks on the specific details of the deal unfold?
Yes, as you just pointed out, both governments seem to have different views on the details of the agreement. And this creates another layer of uncertainty which can affect the Korean economy in a negative direction further. In addition to the rice market access, details on the investment fund, including the structure of how to distribute the revenue from the fund across the countries, can also be further discussed because officials from both countries seem to have somewhat contradicting views on this issue. Also, while the Korean government argues that there is no change in the trade policy related to rice and beef markets, at this stage, I'm not so sure whether the US government will not acquire additional access to the market in the near future, given that its stance on the trade policy has changed a lot even after the announcement of the agreement.
Right, and as for the wider region, U.S. tariffs on its trading partners are set to take effect on Thursday, U.S. local time. So what impact will this have on the global economy?
Yeah, for this, I'm a little bit sure than the other issues, as there is a consensus among economists on this issue. It will clearly have negative impacts on the global economy. First, overall price level will increase globally due to higher tariff rate. And this seems to be already take place in the US, as the CPI inflation rate in June was higher than expected. Second, lower export to the US will drag down production from the exporting countries like Korea, which also increase unemployment rate. And the problem is that these two issues together makes the problem and the economy more difficult to solve, especially for the central banks, because they require the opposite actions. Higher prices require higher interest rate as the policy response, but higher unemployment requires lower interest rate as the ultimate response. And this might eventually make the global economy to enter severe recessions if the situation continues.
I see. I guess we'll have to see how that plays out. All right, Professor Shim, thank you so much for your insight today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Samsung Electronics is to supply next-generation chips for Apple products from its production plant in the United States. Through a press release on Thursday, Apple stated that the foundry plant in Texas will supply chips that optimize power and performance for its products. Industry insiders say that the Korean tech giant is expected to produce image sensor chips for Apple's production line. Samsung Electronics provided no comments. This announcement came as President Trump announced that Apple is to make an additional $100 billion investment, a move to expand the company's domestic investment commitment. Following the statement, Apple shares rose by nearly 6% midday on Wednesday compared to the day before. South Korea posted a current account surplus of $14.27 billion in June, the largest monthly surplus ever. According to the Bank of Korea on Thursday, the figure was driven by strong exports of chips and a sharp rise in dividend income. Shipments of IT products, including semiconductors, jumped over 11%, while pharmaceutical exports soared more than 50%. However, steel and automobile exports saw a slip with early impact from U.S. tariffs. Regionally, exports to the U.S. and China declined, while the EU and Southeast Asia saw solid growth. South Korea has now logged a surplus in 26 consecutive months. In other news, following a meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff in Moscow, U.S. President Trump hinted at a potential meeting between the two leaders as soon as next week. Our An Sung-jin has the details.
U.S. President Donald Trump could hold in-person talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin as soon as next week. Trump told European leaders during a call on Wednesday that he intends to meet with Putin and then follow up with a three-way talk also involving Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
But we had some very good talks with President Putin today, and there's a very good chance that we could be ending the end of that road. That road was long and continues to be long, but there's a good chance that there will be a meeting very soon.
This follows Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff's trip to Moscow for talks with Putin. Though no readouts of the 3-hour-long meeting have been released, The White House said that the meeting had gone well, and Trump added that it was highly productive, resulting in major progress. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio added that Putin outlined concrete examples of the kinds of things that Russia would ask for, further stating that it may be the first time doing so since the administration began. The Kremlin later said that Putin had sent a signal to the U.S. regarding Ukraine, to which the U.S. allegedly responded. Through a post on Truth Social, Trump also confirmed that he spoke with Zelensky as well, adding that everyone agrees this war must end. Zelensky later addressed the call through a social media message, saying that they talked about what was discussed in Moscow and acknowledged that Russia does seem more inclined to agree to a ceasefire. He also thanked his European allies for their support. This comes just days before a deadline set by Trump for Russia to agree to peace in Ukraine or face tougher sanction measures, including secondary sanctions on countries that do business with Russia. When and where the meeting would take place is unclear, but if this meeting does take place, it will be the first face-to-face meeting between a sitting U.S. and Russian president since 2021, when former President Biden met with Putin in Geneva. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Los Angeles Football Club officially unveiled new signing South Korean national team captain Son Heung-min at a press conference on Wednesday. Speaking to reporters at the BMO Stadium in Los Angeles, Son called the move a dream come true. The team's co-president and general manager John Thornton praised Son, calling him a global icon and one of the most dynamic and accomplished players in world football. He added that the MLS club is proud Son chose LAFC for the next chapter of his career. Son spent the past 10 years with Tottenham Hotspur in the English Premier League before making his move to the U.S.
Good morning, I'm Walter Lee, filling in for Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. Starting off in Ghana, where the country's defense and environment ministers were among the 8 people killed in a helicopter crash. Defense Minister Edward Omane Boama and Environment, Science and Technology Minister Ibrahim Muthala Muhammad died in a crash in the Ashanti region on Wednesday. 3 other officials and 3 crew members also died in the crash. The helicopter had departed from the capital, Accra, just after 9 a.m. local time and was heading to the town of Obuasi for an event addressing illegal mining. Later, Ghana's armed forces reported losing radar contact with their helicopter. The cause of the crash is still unknown. Moving over to the U.S. now, where a suspect is in custody after 5 soldiers were shot and injured at the Fort Stewart Army base in Georgia on Wednesday local time. According to reports, the alleged shooter, identified as 28-year-old U.S. Army Sergeant Cornelius Radford, used a personal handgun in the shooting before being subdued by other soldiers. Officials said that they were unclear about the motive and that the suspect opened fire at an area of the base where he is assigned. Fort Stewart, one of the largest army bases in the U.S., was briefly locked down after the incident. However, all 5 victims are said to be in stable condition and expected to make a full recovery. The 2025 World Robot Conference is set to open on Friday in Beijing as the industry continues rapid growth across China. The 10th edition of the event will showcase the latest breakthroughs in robotics, from realistic humanoid robots to automatons that look like animals. Over 200 companies from both China and abroad set to participate, presenting advancements in automation, artificial intelligence, and smart robotics. The conference will run until August 12th. And finally, to the Czech Republic, where 4 rare Barbary lion cubs made their first public appearance at Dvor Králové Safari Park, closely watched by their parents Kalila and Bart. The 3 female and 1 male cubs were born in January, marking an important addition to the small remaining population of the rare species, which is extinct in the wild. The last known photograph of a wild Barbary lion was taken in 1925 and is believed to have disappeared completely by the mid-1960s. Today, fewer than 200 Barbary lions are thought to remain in captivity.
Today marks 입추, the start of autumn, but don't let the name fool you. While not as severe as the peak of the recent heat wave, we are in for another hot day. The overnight heat did not subside well, leading to a tropical night for Seoul and other areas. Meanwhile, Seogwipo on Jeju Island has been seeing tropical nights for over 3 weeks now. And the resort island will be seeing rainfall all day today with 20 to 60 millimeters in the forecast. A bit of rain is also possible in the southern regions and parts of central areas until this morning. East Coast regions could be getting 5 to 30 millimeters. But the skies will get sunnier from the west, and Seoul and Chuncheon will be topping out at 32 degrees. Daegu, Gyeongju will be hotter at 33 degrees Celsius with sunnier skies and strong UV rays. Now, those on Jeju need to keep an umbrella handy with more rain expected through next Monday. But mornings and evenings will be much more bearable for the next 5 days, hoping to jump right into the autumn. Take care.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.